Yes, all right. Pato Yuji Omuntwawansi, greetings to all Africans from every single corner of the continent, those in East Africa as a region, Central Africa, Southern Africa, Western Africa, those from the Northern Corridor. We deliver our regards to you this evening. Here we are, Wake Up Africa. In my local language, it is Zukuka Africa. I don't know how you define it, because we live in the world whereby we are defined by a number of cultures, norms, and values. But irrespective of where you are, I salute you. You would help me do one single thing: hit the subscription button, subscribe, like, share, so that you do not miss any single upload that we shall be updating on this very channel in the due course of the week. We have a number of challenges, but as I told you, the two major causes of our challenges in Africa as of today, the major ones, because we are stuck in a number of challenges, most of them are minor, but the two major root cause of our challenges and problems today in Africa, it is poor leadership and also the Western influence. Then from those two, you will add on all the other problems and challenges that we are facing as a continent. I want to draw your attention to the regrettable event that transpired in the US of recent, whereby a single head of state summons over 50 heads of state. It is ridiculous. One single head of state summons over 50 heads of state. And out of the 50 plus, 49 heads of state turn up to an event that has no clear agenda, to an event of hypocrisy, to the event that every single African shouldn't be proud of. It transpired in the due course of the week. So regrettable, but that is where we are as Africa. Oh, I'm still looking for my video. I'm still looking for the video.
I'm announcing.
Yes, here we are. So, this is the event that I'm talking about. You see, I've been telling you that most of the African leaders, dictators, criminals, thugs, murderers, killers, are puppets of the West. That is why I still insist that one of our major problems is the Western influence. The Western elements involving in the affairs of Africa as a continent. You see, all these beggars that you're seeing on the screen have improvised and sickened our systems at the expense of their greedy motives. Africa heads of state flying to the US to attend a summit to discuss its own problems. Just no wonders will never come to an end. You see, African heads of state, 49 African heads of state, most of them are dictators, criminals, murderers, looters, thieves, thugs that have committed a number of crimes. Crimes against humanity. Crimes of torture. And all these heads of state, as you see, 90% of them, they must be jailed. They should have been in the dock as early as yesterday. They should have been in the dock as early as 10 years back. But you see, you fly from Africa to go to America, of all countries, America, to discuss problems of Africa so that you can find a lasting solution in a summit that has no clear agenda as far as the interest of Africans is concerned. These criminals, puppets of the West, you're summoned without even being shy, and you turn up at the event that has no single clear agenda. Because you see, the problem that they're going to discuss in America, part of the problems that have been affecting our people across the entire continent of Africa, their root cause are the Western elements spearheaded by US as a country. These elements that claim to be the pioneers of the core principles of human rights, the champions of human rights, the defenders of human rights, the promoters of the core principles of human rights, yet they are at the forefront of inviting criminals, thugs that have violated the rights of million innocent citizens in Africa. You see? So you go to discuss the problems of Africa so that you can find a lasting solution of all the places. You go to the US, which is part of the problems of Africa. You yourselves, you do not know that you, the so-called leaders, the so-called heads of state that are presiding over the affairs of Africa as a continent, irrespective of the country where you come from, you're also part of the problem. So a problem meeting a problem, America itself is a problem, the dictators themselves are a problem, so they are discussing the problems of Africa to find a lasting solution. And you think that is possible? You got to beg from your master. That is what we call mental slavery. And we are stuck in mental slavery as Africa. You see, this is a tragedy, a real tragedy. Shameless dictators, shameless killers, the likes of Paulo Kagame, the likes of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, a brutal murderer. You see, so disgusting. This is hypocrisy of the highest level. Dictators of Africa, it is a real disgrace to look at such footage, such events, such a photo. It is so disgrace. Because you see, they have to invite the American president to Africa instead of traveling to America. This Biden, ever since it took over power in 2000, I think, 20, it is now almost 3 years. He has never paid any single diplomatic visit to Africa. But he has the courtesy, he has the moral authority, he has the audacity, the capacity to summon 49 heads of state, and they also turn up. And that is Africa for you. That is Africa for you. And when they traveled, to make matters worse, the 49 heads of state, they traveled with their advisors, security personnel, air workers, and so on. They spend millions of dollars for nothing, only to take part in the dinner for the White House. You can imagine. When America advises them on her interest and business in Africa, still African people are left in a miserable poverty. Because as they were traveling, they traveled with a team. Some traveled with the ministers, others with their personal secretaries, then flight workers, then security teams, and they were facilitated for all the events that transpired in the US. The money that facilitated this travel journeys and then whatever transpired is money from the treasury. Because they didn't travel as a single individual, they traveled as a team. Only to spend a dinner in White House. And also US as a country to lecture them on the interest of US and also on its business in Africa. As we are stricken with poverty, hunger, famine, and all the conflicts that are transpiring in every single region of Africa. That is where we are. So until we wake up from the mental slavery, until we wake up as Africans, don't ever think that the Western elements, US, European member states, are going to solve the problems of Africa. Because, in summary, they are part and parcel of the real problems that we find ourselves in as of today. And that is where we are. That is where we are. So, look at these puppets. You look at them and you laugh. And you ask yourself a question. Where are we as of now? And where are we heading in the next few years? Because you see, we have everything in Africa, but they want to beg for what we so far have. Because when they went there, Biden promised them something like $55 billion US dollars in terms of donations and aid. And then he talked about the 350 something US billion dollars to boost the technological advancement and then the communication channels. You see? So as long as these Western elements serve the interest of the dictators, of these murderers, of these killers that you're seeing on the screen, and they serve their interest in return so that they can stay long in power, so that they can keep their longevity, that is where they benefit from. That is where we are. So they have committed impunity, atrocities, all the crimes against humanity in all the corners of Africa. Because as I told you, US as of now, it is fighting for its dominance on the African continent, both militarily and economically. You know how China has dominated the entire continent when it comes to economic power and base. So the US is fighting so hard to ensure that it pulls back, it comes back in the game, and also re-strategizes through the so-called leaders that are puppets, that are beggars, that are stuck in mental slavery. It is also fighting so hard to kick out Russia, that has dominated the continent in terms of supplying the military weapons and also staging the political base in Africa. Because you see, just listen to the statement that were issued by His Excellency President Joe Biden.
I'm announcing a new initiative, the Digital Transformation with Africa, working with Congress to invest $350 billion to facilitate more than almost $500 million in financing to make sure people across Africa can participate in the digital economy. That includes partnerships like new collaboration between Microsoft and Visa to bring in internet access to 5 million Africans, part of Microsoft's commitment to bring access to 100 million people across Africa by the end of the year 2025. That means programs to train African entrepreneurs with a focus on women entrepreneurs, to code and build skills that need to start their own businesses, to secure good-paying jobs and with technology firms. And this will include partnerships between African-American companies to provide cybersecurity services to make sure Africa's digital environment is reliable and secure.
So you can get me very well. You see, they'll talk about extending financial aid, military aid, donations, medical assistance, and then you clap your hands, not knowing that everything that we are looking for in America is within Africa. The continent of Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of natural resources. But again, in reality, it is the poorest continent in the world. Reason being, it is because of the Western influence. They are telling you of how they are going to be extending plus $350 billion something dollars, $55 billion in terms of boosting the economy, in terms of boosting the technology. Yet in actual sense, when they come in with this figure, when they are moving out, they move out with more than double of that figure that they have invested in Africa. If he's talking about 350 US billion dollars, when they are pulling out money in Africa, resources in Africa, they will end up moving with almost $1 trillion. They'll end up moving with close to $800 billion. But you won't pay attention to that figure. And that is America. That is how they operate. That is how the world system was built. That is how these economies have been built. You talk about America's economy being worthy of 25 US trillion dollars. You talk about China being at 19 trillion dollars. You talk about China. You talk about Germany close to 6 trillion US dollars. And they think they are depending on their resources. Some countries do not have any single mineral. Others who have, they have minimum minerals. But Africa with vast of minerals, stuck in stricken poverty, simply because we are sustaining these economies when you try to follow and monitor its background, you'll find out that its base, the base of the so-called strong economies, is in Africa, is in Southern America, and countries from the developing world. And that's where we are today. But we are still asleep, thinking that these so-called leaders, these murderers, these criminals, the thugs, these puppets of the West, they have the moral authority, they have the capacity, they have the interest in transforming Africa. The so-called dictators like MUSEVENI, who is a murderer, who is a criminal gang. The so-called dictators like KAGAME, who have been camouflaging all along. The so-called dictators from Western Africa, Central Africa. France has caused the catastrophe in Central Africa, staging coups, military coups one after the other, facilitating terror groups within Africa, causing conflicts in every single region in Africa. And at the end of the day, they come as the problem solver. They initiate, they pioneer peace processes, reconciliation processes between different stakeholders. And you think you can trust them? Is there any single individual on planet Earth who is sane, who is sensible, who is intelligent, who can still trust America that has caused the catastrophe in different parts of the world? So you look at these leaders, 49 so-called heads of state. You're being summoned, you go to America to discuss the problems of Africa, that you're going to find a lasting solution in America, where America is part of the problem, where you solves the real problems of Africa, because I will state it without any single fear of contradiction. The two major problems of Africa as of now, Africa as a continent, it is poor leadership. The people who are presiding over the national affairs in their respective countries, they are not patriots, they are rotters, they are thieves, they are thugs, they are criminal gangs, they are killers, they are serving their greedy motives, they are serving their personal interests, which interests are wicked in nature. And that is where we are today. Who can ever trust America? Because as I'm telling you, DRC alone is one of the richest countries in the world in terms of natural resources. But in reality, it is one of the poorest countries in the world. It controls 70% of a mineral called cobalt. Cobalt that is being used to make these phones, to manufacture electronics, TVs, computers. It controls 70% of cobalt that is in the world. But as I'm talking right now, the population in DRC Congo is stuck in poverty, stricken in poverty. But you see, has he made this statement? No sooner had he made this statement, Joe Biden, than they started cutting deals, and this is what transpired.
Signed or witnessed the signing of a memorandum of understanding in which the U.S. will support the DRC and Zambia in developing an electric vehicle value chain. I really want to commend the DRC and Zambia, their governments, for their leadership and vision in developing an electric vehicle battery council. This is the future, and it is happening in the DRC and Zambia. The DRC produces more than 70% of the world's cobalt. Zambia is the world's 6th largest copper producer, and 2nd largest cobalt producer in Africa. Global demand for critical minerals is going to skyrocket over the next decades. The plan to develop an electric battery supply chain opens the door for U.S. and like-minded investment to keep more value added in Africa. Electric vehicles help reduce carbon emissions. They support the global response to the climate crisis. This memorandum exploring technical assistance for the EV supply chain. Our Exim Bank.
So, this is how African leaders can be disgraceful in nature. Because you stand there like as if you are hopeless. The deal that they were signing a copper deal between America, Zambia, and DRC Congo. That in the due course of time, DRC Congo, the Republic of Zambia, are going to be trading partner with America in terms of copper. And whatever they're trading, they're not even trading a final product, but they're trading a raw material. You see, because when we are exporting these minerals, these products, that's why I said we produce what we do not consume, and we consume what we do not produce. No wonder we always register, most of the African countries, they have a negative balance of payment position. I'm talking about the value or what we earn from the exports as compared to what we spend or the expenditure on the imports. When you compare the two, we have a negative balance of payment position, or what we call the terms of trade. The value of your exports as compared to the value of your imports. What you spend on imports as compared to what we earn from the exports. So we always have negative terms of trade. We always have a negative balance of payment position, simply because in most cases, even amidst exporting these minerals, we always export raw materials. We export crude oil, and then the Western elements will get the final product in terms of kerosene, in terms of diesel, in terms of petrol. And at the end of the day, they will be the greatest beneficiaries. They will get the greatest share from the products that are coming from Africa. So they are signing a cooperation agreement, a trade agreement, in that DRC now, DRC as a country will be exporting its copper to America, and also Zambia doing the same. That is why I'm telling you, as of now, USA is reclaiming its dominance economically, militarily, and politically in Africa. But they will tell you that we are having a U.S. African summit, a summit that has no single clear agenda to serve the interests of Africans, but rather the Americans will take you for a dinner in White House, and then they will start to lecture you about their interests. They will start to lecture you about their business in Africa. And at the end of the day, Africa will pay the greatest price. At the end of the day, we Africans, we shall remain the victims of this impunity. I'm telling you, who can ever trust America? Look at these murderers. US is always a double standard mafia, the greatest enemy of Africa, whose main aim is to pretend that it is there to promote the fundamental human rights of Africans. That is why they will come and formulate all the theoretical papers, the so-called human rights protocols, the so-called human rights charters. They will get the theoretical papers. We become signatories. We sign on them as we are going to respect them. They will also sign on them as they are going to respect the core principles, the values within these documents. At the end of the day, they are not respected. And these criminals, these thugs, these gangs that are at the forefront of violating the core principles, the fundamental rights of Africans, they are invited, they sit on the same table with the so-called champions, defenders, promoters of human rights. Which kind of hypocrisy is more than this? So, this is America's strategic way of colonizing and controlling Africa. They all gathered the entire support of America to continuously make Africa depend on them in terms of finances, in terms of every kind of support. It is a strategic plan. That is why you need to interest yourself to America's foreign policy. That is how it works. So they are now strategizing. They want to dominate again. They are recolonizing Africa again. But the battle is between them, China, Russia, and other Western actors. That is where the battle is. So, we are not going to entertain these political vampires. Just a bunch of selfish people who have gutted their countries of all resources with no regard to the well-being of their citizens. No. We can't entertain this. It is a bunch of criminals that are there to serve their personal interests that are wicked in nature. They are greedy motives at the expense of citizens who are suffering in Africa, across the entire continent of Africa. No one should lie you that these leaders, the so-called leaders, when they were invited, they went on an agenda to serve the interest of Africa as a continent. No way. No way. They went to pursue their political career so that they can serve the interests of the Western elements. So France, America, the so-called international organizations that have caused the conflicts and chaos in Africa as a continent. So that was their agenda. So this is a total disgrace on African leaders. Africa has all it takes to rule the world. It is so painful. We have all what it takes to rule the world. We are rich in terms of the natural resources. We have all the ability, the capacity, the skills, I can assure you, in every single aspect of life. Let it be entertainment, let it be sports. That is why we dominate. Africa will dominate. Go to entertainment, go to sports, go to different specialist professionals who are running institutions in these countries. Most of them are Africans. But what do? They will come, they will take out the human resource, they will take out the natural resources, they will take out every single resource. And for us, we shall be stuck in a number of issues. So many challenges. Very, very many challenges. And that is Africa for you. So, I want to tell you that genuine African liberation requires power. Power, it requires real power. So, when Africans gain real power, I can assure you, Africa and the African people worldwide will have the ability to determine and pursue their own destiny without anyone having the capacity to stop them. I can assure you. We are powerless as of now. But the moment we wake up and regain real power, I can assure you, no single individual will stop us, irrespective of where we are. I know Africans are across the globe, in Asia, Southern America, America as a continent, Africa, they are spread everywhere. But the moment we get that real power, and getting power, that is why I believe in real power as a movement. Real power, people power as a movement, people power as a slogan, where we believe that power, real power belongs to the people. And power does not mean having access to power. The so-called power in Africa as of now. Associating to those who are in power as of now. Being famous, no way. Real power means having the ability to make strong, fundamental decisions within the society. It is that power that we are pursuing as of now. And we cannot pursue it not until we wake up as Africans, we wake up as Ugandans, we wake up as East Africans, as Western Africans, as Southern Africans, as Northern Africans, as Africans that are living within the boundaries of the continent of Africa. We cannot, I can assure you. We shall stay in the same circus, thinking that the Western world, thinking that the Western elements, the international actors, they are going to come and help us, thinking that the criminals, that the thugs, the murderers that are presiding over the affairs of our respective countries, that are going to take us to the next step, that are going to transform the economies in Africa, that are going to transform our democracies. That is a typical lie. A real typical lie. So, I can assure you, African countries have so many people. We have so many young people. But people who are presiding over the affairs of Africa, there are people who are sick, who are half dead, half alive. I can assure you. We have so many, the so-called presidents that you call the presidents, so many ministers, MOPs, so many dignitaries. but they have no control over Africa. They are powerless. I can assure you they are powerless. All these bunch of criminals, puppets, gangs, thugs, I can assure you they are powerless. The Western world, the Western governments, they are controlling the affairs in Africa. All of them have been captured. That is why a single individual can summon them and they all respond. Putin can summon them today in the so-called Russia African Summit, UK African Summit, or the so-called America African Summit. They summon them, they take their heads, not knowing that, in fact, they know they're under the control of the Western governments. They go to negotiate how they can sell Africa, as we, the native Africans, are looking on. This is the modern day mental slavery. This is the modern day neo-colonialism. That's where we are. Very stuck. Very stuck. So, if an African leader attempts to stir up an independent cause, even after experiencing threats and coercion, intelligence agencies of the Western government, I can assure you, will engineer a coup, or even in some cases an assassination. The moment, I can tell you, they are being controlled, and they can only serve the interests of the West. So the cause to rescue Africa can only be identified, spearheaded, monitored, and implemented by we the Africans. That is the only way to go. Because the moment you see now these puppets, foreign agents, agents of the West, I'm talking about the so-called African leaders, they are serving the interests of the West, and they have no option. For that one I know. Because Africa as a continent is under the control of the Western governments and the Western corporations. So the moment they divert, I can assure you, the Western government will cause catastrophe. They'll find a way of eliminating you if you're a leader. They'll either cause a military coup. That is why you've been seeing many in Central Africa. Yes, Central Africa, Mali, Guinea, around there, the chaos that is there, the conflicts that are there. So the moment you divert from serving their interests, I can assure you, they'll find a way of eliminating you, like it or not. Either through a military coup, they can even stage an assassination, they will arrange a number of terror groups, cause chaos, political instability, cause conflicts within in different respective countries, and then at the end of the day, they will come as negotiators, as people who have come to mediate peace processes, as people who come to pioneer and initiate reconciliation processes. Yet in actual sense, they are behind every single deadly move that has caused such a kind of conflict or catastrophe. And that is what transpired in East Africa, in Tanzania. The moment Magufuli, His Excellency, the late, may he so rest in peace, John Pombe Magufuli, refused to serve the interests of the West, they eliminated him. He had to be eliminated. One single president was a Pan-African, that was a patriot, that served the interest of African continent and Tanzania as a country. So they couldn't withstand his candidature, his presidency, so they had to eliminate him. And they eliminated him. That's why I'm telling you, the entire continent of Africa is under the control of the Western governments. They eliminated him. That is one. In other circumstances, when they fail to eliminate you, maybe through assassinations, maybe through causing military coup, maybe through causing a number of political instability, conflicts, what they do, they will resort to the last option they have. And this is what transpired to the late Robert Mugabe. So what do they do? In other cases where an African leader not only attempts to act independently, but establishes an effective defenses to subversion, imperialists may resort to economic warfare. That's what they did in Zimbabwe. And they tried to entirely kill their economy under the reign, under the leadership, under the era of Robert Mugabe. They can crush the economy there and then. And that's what they did in Zimbabwe. So the moment they fail to eliminate you, maybe through assassination, maybe through poisoning, maybe through a military coup, they will look for the last option. They resort for the last option they have. And that is to cause an economic crisis that will stricken the people's livelihood and welfare in Africa. So that's what they did in Zimbabwe. So, in Zimbabwe, you remember the governing party, the Zimbabwe African National Union, initiated a program for the return of the land occupied by the European settlers to Africans. It was a patriotic response. In response, the U.S., I'm talking about the Eastern elements, England and other Western countries commenced and maintained an economic embargo against Zimbabwe for many years and caused a substantial economic decline and a consequent social and political instability. That's what they did. They had to place an economic embargo on Zimbabwe. And even as I talk right now, the victims are still many. They are still in an economic crisis. Even as I talk right now, nobody Mugabe is dead. So that is their last tool they resort to. That's why I'm telling you, we are completely under the control of the Western governments, the Western elements, and the Western corporations. You remember what they did to Colonel Mama Gaddafi, who was initiating, who was pioneering, who was spearheading a campaign of uniting Africa as a whole, and they knew it was one of the greatest challenges to their agenda in Africa. So they had to look for a way of eliminating him. And in 2011, they eliminated him. I remember it was, might have been around October, November, in 2011. They eliminated him. The agenda that he was spearheading, Colonel Mama Gaddafi, was to unite Africa as a whole. And it was one of the greatest challenges that these African countries, whether these Western elements, could ever face in their journey, in their cause, in their project, in their agenda to colonize Africa, to scramble for resources, and also root African resources. It was one of the greatest challenges. Therefore, they had to look for a mechanism, they had to look for a way of eliminating him, and they, at the end of that day, he was eliminated. He was eliminated. Therefore, now my battery has gone off. The camera is off. But as I conclude, political conflicts in Africa, most of them are mostly caused by the Western interference. All the conflicts that you're seeing, the political, the religious-based conflicts, the political conflicts, the ethnicity conflicts, most of them are caused by the Western interference. And the other thing they do, they sponsor candidates in presidential elections. So when these candidates go through, they have to control them. I'm talking about presidential elections. Western governments, they will sponsor candidates in these particular respective elections. And if their candidates go through, and in most cases they go through, they control them. And at the end of the day, because of the terms of agreements, these candidates will serve their interests, and the Western actors will also serve their interests in return. That is why, as of now, we have so many dictators that have spent in power 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades down the road, simply because this longevity is majorly from the Western influence. Therefore, Africa, it is high time we unite, we strive, we fight on our own. Just know we are on our own to crack down dictators like Yoweri Kaguta Museveni from Uganda, dictators, murderers, killers like Paulo Kagame, Paulo Biya from Cameroon, and different countries of Africa, Gabon, Western Africa, Central Africa, and all the Western puppets that have contributed highly to the situation that we are stuck in Africa. Therefore, help me. Let's help each other. We wake up, share this message, share this channel, like it, follow it, subscribe, as we keep on dissecting and also revisiting and also thinking about the issues that are pertaining Africa as a continent. May God bless you. See you next time.